Our discussion today says what Mthwakazi is and what Mthwakazi is not. Now there's a question in the minds and the hearts of so many people around what Mthwakazi is and what Mthwakazi is not. Now, it is in the question. This is a question that seems to have caught the attention of those who like the idea of Mthwakazi, as well as those who hate the concept. You know, there are strong views about Mthwakazi, very strong views. There are those who strongly like the idea. They are prepared to go to great lengths, to see to its realization and fulfillment. And then there are those who are so vehemently opposed. They are opposed to the idea with a passion. So as a result of these strong views around the subject of Mthwakazi, the concept needs defining and redefining, so that at least for those of us who are just following the issue and the subject, we may get a fuller and a clearer understanding of what Mthwakazi is. Now, in this debate and in the whole ongoing discussions about what Mthwakazi is, there seems to be a problem of lack of information on the part of those who are trying to discuss the subject, and in some cases there is outright misinformation. So as a point of departure, I would like us to take note that we are dealing here with misinformation as well as lack of information. By lack of information, we mean people do not have facts, they don't have sufficient knowledge about exactly what the concept Mthwakazi means, what is its birth or genesis, and what are its aims and goals, and where is it going. Then there are those who have maybe been subject of misinformation, whereby we are saying some information has gone out about Mthwakazi, but not all that information is accurate, and some of it has maybe been deliberately peddled by those who want to tarnish the whole idea, and in some cases it has been inadvertent, which means that people have spread misinformation not because they wanted to, but maybe because they lacked sufficient and accurate information. So in this presentation, I'm going to deal with what Mthwakazi is as well as what Mthwakazi is not. So the presentation is structured in this way. Firstly, I'm going to discuss what Mthwakazi is. Then I will go on to unpack some of the misconceptions around what it is. In other words, I'm going to be looking at what Mthwakazi is not. Then the third and the last part, I am going to be refocusing on what Mthwakazi is as a way of reinforcing our understanding of what Mthwakazi is. Now, as I have already said, it is very important to define this concept so that those who are involved in the debate around it have accurate information and they know exactly what they are talking about, and they are discussing issues from the same corner. Now, when you go into the internet and try to understand, for instance, Wikipedia has tried to define Mthwakazi, and it says that Mthwakazi is the traditional name of the Proto-Ndebele, Ndebele people, that is, and the kingdom of the Ndebele in the area of today's Zimbabwe. So that's how Wikipedia defines Mthwakazi. But now, in my own explanation and definition, I'm going to highlight that Mthwakazi is a community, Mthwakazi is a people, and Mthwakazi is territory. These are the key issues that I'm going to be unpacking. So just as a point of departure, this is what I say. Mthwakazi is a community occupying the land between the Zambezi and the Limpopo. That is the north-south, as well as the area between Botswana and the former Jameson line. That is the areas of Matabeleland and parts of present-day Midlands. That is in Zimbabwe. Now, that is the territory. So that is, whenever we talk about Mthwakazi, we are talking about that land which is occupied by the communities of Matabeleland as well as part of Midlands. Now, this area, I have said it's a territory which has a community and a people. It is characterized by a diversity of ethnic or ethno-linguistic groups rather than uniformity. Now, there are so many ethno-linguistic groups that constitute Mthwakazi territory and the Mthwakazi community. I'm just going to give a rundown of them, not in a specific order, not in order of maybe dominance or preference or whatever, but just maybe an alphabetical list would even sound like the attempt that I'm trying to make here. We have the Bakalanga or the Kalanga people who occupy the western part, particularly of the western part of Zimbabwe and the western part of Matabeleland. So we have the Kalanga, we have the Nambia, who speak a language slightly related to Kalanga. Of course, those who know the languages would correct me on this one. Then we have the Ndebele, who happen to be maybe the most prominent and the most well-known group. And then there are the Sotho around in Matabeleland South, the Gwanda areas there, where we also happen to have the Birwa people. And then to the north, we have the Tonga. Then again, closer to the Kalanga, there we have the Tswana people. Then we have the Venda towards the southernmost part. That is around the Beitbridge area there. And then we have the Xhosa, that's on the outskirts of Bulawayo there, the Mbembesi Manxeleni area. And then we have Abatwa there by the Cholocho area. And then we have in the Midlands the Shona people, who also speak Shona as their language. And then, those are the main groups basically. Now, this community constitutes the area that was formerly the kingdom of the Ndebele. Of course, not the whole area was under Ndebele rulership, but King Mthwakazi dominated most of the areas. That is the area where Mthwakazi and Mambo shared dominion there at the time and at the height of the Ndebele kingdom. You will remember very well that the partnership between King Mthwakazi and Mambo is recorded not only in history but even in song and in folklore. We have the song, a popular song, which says, "Kudala kwakungenje umhlaba uyaphenduka kwakubusa uMambo noMzilikazi." So that league between Mzilikazi and Mambo accounted for the political control of the area, particularly the Kalanga area and the southern parts, those communities. Now, that was from the period around the 1830s and 1840s, and since that time, these groups have lived harmoniously, well, in relative harmony, of course. With different groups, there would always be disharmony from time to time, but I think what has been very significant is that they have lived in relative harmony. They have always been able to resolve their differences. In other words, they were able to coalesce into a unique community where diversity was openly embraced. It is not surprising that though the Ndebele kingdom embraced and cherished Ndebele, which is a Nguni, one of the dialects of Isinguni, there was still tolerance of the local languages such as Kalanga, Tonga, Nambia, and all those languages spoken by the neighboring groups. For instance, we know very well that King Mthwakazi did give allegiance or pay allegiance to the Kalanga shrine and the deity there by Njelele, where he constantly paid homage. So those are some of the things that we understand about the uniqueness of Matabeleland. So far from the lie that is often peddled, which says that the Ndebele were intolerant and dominating everybody and so on, the truth on the ground is that it was a kind of a league or a partnership between the Ndebele and the local communities. So by 1893, these groups had lived together under the dominant political protection of Lopengula, the son of Mthwakazi, the successor to Mthwakazi. So Lopengula Khumalo, the then king, gave them that protection from the colonial maneuvers of the British. Remember, during the late 1880s and the early 1890s, it was obvious that the British wanted to take over territory. So by virtue of trying to survive, that propensity for communities to survive, Lopengula offered that protection, at least from the invasion and the encroachment of British colonial project and maneuvers. So that then consolidated that area into a bloc, a political bloc, whereby they were now able to live together, understanding the threat, the existential threat that was being posed by the British at that time. And now, even under colonial rule, you will understand that because they were colonized as one bloc, that is remember, Mashonaland was colonized early in 1890 as different territory, and then some 3 years later, almost 3-4 years later, the British were then able to conquer the Ndebele territory, which means basically all those other groups then fell together with the Ndebele as one entity, which has now become known as Matabeleland. In fact, it was known as Matabeleland even when it was taken over. You remember the Matabeleland, the proclamations that were made by the British Parliament to consolidate their power over Matabeleland, the Matabeleland Order in Council of 1894. So those were in fact the way the territory was approached shows that the British themselves understood that it was one territory. So they lived together then under one territory. It will be worth noting that the Ndebele did not impose their language on other groups as such, but this was the work of the colonial project. I think those of you who may have been listening to Zimu Unami Moyo, who has spoken very extensively about the issue of language control, he has raised the issue that some British administrative endeavors during the colonial period are the ones who crafted the language policy, which ended up giving Ndebele that linguistic dominance over all the other groups, while in Mashonaland, of course, that was the time when Shona was, when the diverse groups were then brought together under a linguistic umbrella called the Shona. I think those of you who are interested may follow him and his arguments and his, his articulations of those issues. Suffice to say that under the colonial rule, these Ndebele, Venda, Kalanga, Tonga, Tswana, Sutu, Xhosa, Nambia, and Shona people faced the same kind of oppression in Matabeleland, and so they ended up launching a war of independence, of course, which was launched, I would say, jointly with the people in Zimbabwe, that is in Mashonaland. So it is very important then to understand that this community has a unique, past. They share a common past. They share common vision. Of course, until a certain point, it was taken that they shared the same common vision with the people of Mashonaland, that is Zimbabwe. So you find that then at independence, Matabeleland was incorporated into Zimbabwe's political boundaries. So though incorporated into Zimbabwe's political boundaries, these people still cherish a sense of uniqueness, which is informed by this, the challenges that they have been facing, as well as their dreams and aspirations about, self-determination. Of course, this has contributed immensely to the resurgence of this call for an independent homeland or a separate state. And, as an echo of these views on self-determination, though there are some people who believe that self-determination can still be realizable, that is, within the context of Zimbabwe's political boundaries. But, well, let's leave that debate to those who are currently seized with it. You see, but what has actually contributed maybe to the resurgence of this debate is the failure by Zimbabwe to morph into a nation 41 years after the end of the British colonial rule. You will realize that for 41 years, Zimbabwe has had an opportunity to really forge a nation where a common identity for all the people can be realized. But, well, there are some who argue that Zimbabwe has failed in that regard. And as a result, this has contributed immensely to this idea or this concept of an independent political bloc called Mthwakazi. So I have endeavored to demonstrate that Zimbabwe, Mthwakazi is a territory, it is a community, it is a people. It's a people who see themselves as unique. It is a people who believe that they should take over and be in charge of their destinies. It consists of a people who have endured 41 years at the periphery of Zimbabwe's society, seen maybe largely as second-rate human beings, not enjoying full rights of citizenship, even though in paper and in law they seem to be entitled to those rights. The de facto situation, that is what is actually obtaining on the ground, is that this is the area that has seen marginalization, systemic tribalism, a displacement of the people, especially under the guise of land reform, where people have been taken from other districts and other provinces, and they have been allocated land resources in Mthwakazi territory. I'm not talking here about people who have bought and purchased the properties in the urban settlements. I'm talking about people who have been allocated land in the rural areas, in the where communities, local communities ought to be recycled. You then find that it is people who have been taken from Rusape, or people who have been taken from Zwimba or Mazoe or other areas, far reaching. So this is the community, this is the Mthwakazi community that we are talking about, who speak the languages that I've just referred to and who cherish the values that I've just referred to above. So now my next point is to look at what Mthwakazi is not. Having understood what it is, now I want to deal with a few misconceptions, quite a number of them. Number one, some people believe that Mthwakazi is a Nguni Puritan group. That is, it is a group of Nguni people. And secondly, some people believe that the proposed Mthwakazi state is a resurgence of the Ndebele group, and therefore it's going to elevate people of Ndebele pedigree onto the helm of politics. And then some people believe that Mthwakazi is an anti-Shona hate group. They believe that it is a group that is mobilized or is mobilizing people around the principle of hatred for the Shona people, and maybe that has maybe been justified by some people's observations, but I'll address that a little later. And then some people believe that Mthwakazi is a political party. And then there are some people who believe that Mthwakazi exists solely because of what maybe the Shona-led government of Zimbabwe has done. So those are some of the issues that I would like to address. First and foremost, for those who believe that Mthwakazi is a Nguni group, a Puritan Nguni group where people are seeking to promote Nguni, a people of Nguni pedigree, that is a pure breed of Nguni people, unadulterated, so that it's about promoting Nguni hegemony. It's about establishing the people of Khumalo clan and all those with the original Nguni surnames, such as maybe Khumalo I have spoken of, people like the Dlaminis, and people like Dlodlos, people like Omhlongo and Pepe, some of those original Nguni surnames. So there are those who believe that Mthwakazi is about that, but I would hasten to say that such a view is misguided. Mthwakazi is much broader than the Nguni clan. It's much broader than any attempt to give dominance to a Nguni group, because even numerically speaking, the Nguni people are the original Nguni people that constitute Matabele population is very insignificant and small. Of course, it is greater in terms of influence, but not in terms of numbers. So far from it, this Mthwakazi concept or the community is not meant to give prominence to the Nguni group at the expense of others. That's not the intention, because there are a lot of people who subscribe to Mthwakazi but who are not of Nguni origin. Those who did not even come from the current present day KwaZulu-Natal. So that the idea that Mthwakazi is a Nguni group, that one is a falsehood, it's a lie. So then that raises the question of why there is maybe an attempt or a proclamation that Bulelani Lopengula Khumalo is the king. Well, Bulelani Lopengula Khumalo is the king of the Ndebele people. Remember, the Ndebele are a component or a constituent element of the Mthwakazi community. So it doesn't mean that when King Bulelani is crowned, then he is going to now take over even the cultural groups such as the Kalanga, the Tonga, the Venda, and so on. We must be able to distinguish things here. Inkosi Bulelani is Inkosi Yamandebele. He's the king of the Ndebele people. So those other people, those other groups who are outside the Ndebele linguistic and the cultural grouping should not feel threatened, because there's nothing that prevents the Tonga people or the Kalanga people or the Nambia people or the Venda people or whoever to have their own kings and to have their own chiefs and queens within their territory, because it's all about culture, it's all about cultural cohesion, it's all about living in that pride. I think the people who are sharing this fear are mostly those people who do not believe in diversity. It's mostly those people who believe that people can't be the same and still live together. It's those people who subscribe to the idea that in order to have one nation or one national entity, then individual identity must be criminalized. It is those people who really need to be corrected, especially those who subscribe to Samora Machel's idea that in order to build a nation, the tribe must die. That is actually the danger that Africa sits on. In fact, that kind of a mindset has been the basis and the justification for ethnic genocide, as was experienced in the case of Gugurahundi, where somebody was trying to silence another ethnic group or other ethnic groups and then cow them to submission so that then one ethnic group would have dominance and then carry that banner of being a nation and try to impose their identity and their values on everybody else. That is not nation building, that is colonization at its worst. And so there are those who believe that Mthwakazi is designed as an anti-Shona hate group. Such people subscribe to the idea that Mthwakazi exists only for the purpose of hating the Shona, of castigating them, of attacking them, as if there were no Shona people in the world or in Matabeleland or wherever, Mthwakazi would not exist. That is far from the truth, because Mthwakazi, as I have sketched out above, already existed while the Shona were also living by the other side of Mnyati River. So the issue of Mthwakazi being an anti-Shona group is actually unfounded. It's far-fetched. There is absolutely no reason for the Shona people to be afraid of the Mthwakazi idea, because it is not designed against them. It is designed for the people that are in favor of it. Maybe there may have been an anti-Shona rhetoric and Shona bashing, rhetoric among some people. I think that's a matter of personal opinion rather than an expression of what the Mthwakazi idea itself is. Mthwakazi idea is not about hatred of the Shona people. It is not designed against them. In fact, as I have already highlighted above, there are so many Shona-speaking people in the territory that is currently defined as Mthwakazi. We have people in the Midlands area, people in places such as Gokwe, places such as Jombe. We have places such as Shabane, even areas around Mvuma, areas around Mberengwa. All those areas are in the Midlands, and some of those areas fall within Mthwakazi territory, and some of the and in those areas you find Shona speaking people. So anybody who assumes that Mthwakazi is born out of the idea of hating and castigating, and demonizing the Shona people is misguided and misinformed. In fact, that is a dangerous idea, because it is hate idea, it is hate information, it is hate propaganda. Anybody who constitutes a group around that would even find himself or herself being sidelined and being isolated in the international community, because hate groups are not tolerated worldwide. It is a concept that everybody ought to fully understand, that nobody can constitute a state precisely with the intention of hating another group, excluding another group, demonizing another group of people, and portraying them as his or her enemy. It's all about understanding fully what the concept of Mthwakazi is. So I would like to belabor this point and highlight it once more, that Mthwakazi is not a hate group. It is a community of people who have their own values, their own dreams, and their own aspirations, and who are keen on developing and forging a community that will share common values and move in a certain direction. Claim their right to self-determination, and then, shape their own destiny, if one would say. That is a very, very important thing. I don't know how I can emphasize and re-emphasize that, so that it can stick into the head of every listener. And then another misconception is that Mthwakazi is a political party. That is a misconception. There is a party, or there are parties that go by the name Mthwakazi. There may be a Mthwakazi Liberation Front, or there may be a Mthwakazi Republic Party, or any other party that could be formed now or in future to carry the name Mthwakazi this and Mthwakazi that. Just like there's a Zimbabwe African National Union, it doesn't mean that every Zimbabwean is a ZANU. No. So in the same way, Mthwakazi is not a party. Mthwakazi is a community. Mthwakazi is a people. Mthwakazi is a territory. So that must be fully understood, so that anybody speaking about this will not be confused. Still on that note, these political parties did not originate or create the name Mthwakazi. This is a very, very old name. Those of you who would have studied this Ndebele at high school would remember some books such as this Ndebele poetry or anthology titled Isidlodlo sika Mthwakazi. Now, this is a sign that people already were conscious of their identity as Mthwakazi people. It's only that at a certain point, especially at the height of Gukurahundi persecution, people could not openly talk about their own identity and their own uniqueness, because diversity was criminalized under ZANU-PF and under Robert Mugabe during that time. And it continues to be, but maybe the playing field and the environment has changed a little bit, and people are now able to openly identify themselves as Mthwakazi. But so the issue is, this is not a new word, it's not a new term. Anybody who would have read these books in school will agree with me. There used to be a Mthwakazi Arts Festival there in Bulawayo, and people used to attend it. And already at that time, the identity Mthwakazi was already being cherished. It has always been cherished by the people. So it's not a new concept. People should not be fooled to believe that Mthwakazi is a new concept created by a new political party. What the political parties have actually done is they are championing the cause. They are promoting the idea because they strongly identify with the idea. As a result, these parties take the name upon themselves, and then they articulate what they believe to be the values and the visions of this particular community that I have already referred to above. So then, having said what Mthwakazi is and what Mthwakazi is not, I then go on to sketch out who Mthwakazi is. Now, as a point of correction, there are people who talk about Mthwakazi and so on. There's nothing like that, linguistically speaking. Mthwakazi is a people, Mthwakazi is a territory, Mthwakazi is a community. An individual who belongs or identifies himself with that community is a Mthwakazi when he is one or when she is one. But when there are many, they are called Abethwakazi. So where people often say Mthwakazians, or the appropriate words would be Umthwakazi or Abethwakazi. You see, so Mthwakazi is one person, Abethwakazi is many people. And Mthwakazi also means the territory, the community at large. Now, so then the question is, who is a Mthwakazi? How does one become a Mthwakazi? There are quite a few, criteria to think about. A Mthwakazi is anyone who is resident in the territory that I have outlined above, who takes Mthwakazi as his or her home and not as a place of work. If somebody is going to come from somewhere to come and work in Mthwakazi territory with the intention of amassing resources, whether financial or whatever, and then eventually go back to their place of residence or originate another point, then that person is certainly not a Mthwakazi. And that point doesn't even require any debate. It is only those who take the territory and the place and the community as their own, not those who come in as mercenaries or as job seekers, as fortune seekers, to come and dig for gold, to come and, obtain resources so that they can enrich themselves while displacing the original or inhabitants of that place. So Mthwakazi is anybody resident there who takes the territory as their home and the community as his or her own. And Mthwakazi is anyone who disdains or marginalizes, in fact, who disdains or despises or criticizes or is opposed to the marginalization of Abethwakazi and despises the displacement of Abethwakazi people by people from other territories. Anybody who wants to guard the territory jealously is a Mthwakazi. A Mthwakazi is anyone who advocates justice for Gugurahundi victims. Anybody who does not trivialize the pain and the experiences endured by the people of Matabeleland and Midlands who have been victims of ZANU-PF-led government for 41 years, a government that continues to vote against the genocide convention and other such international anti-genocide initiatives because its values are built on perpetuation of systemic tribalism and genocide against those that it is opposed to. So anybody who advocates for justice on behalf of the victims of genocide, that is Gugurahundi, is a Mthwakazi. Anybody who shares the view that Mthwakazi territory is for the Mthwakazi people, that it is inappropriate to bring in people from other territories to come and take over and displace the local people, because that cannot be tolerated. If colonialism was viewed as an evil way back then, why should modern colonization be embraced as if it was something to cherish? broadly. So those are some of the issues that really need to be highlighted. So I have endeavored to sketch out here what Mthwakazi is. As we began, our question was, what is Mthwakazi and what Mthwakazi is not? So we endeavored here to explain what Mthwakazi is and what Mthwakazi is not. But most importantly, we also went on to highlight why some people feel so strongly about this, the concept of Mthwakazi. There are those who believe that it will usher them into that era of milk and honey. And then there are those who feel threatened because they thought that Mthwakazi was designed maybe to as a hate group, to isolate and punish another group of people, particularly the Shona speaking people. So there are those who felt that it was meant to destroy those groups. But what we have highlighted here is that Mthwakazi is a community, a peace-loving community of people. Mthwakazi is a people who speak diverse languages and belong to diverse linguistic and cultural groups in Matabeleland and parts of Midlands, and that Mthwakazi is a community that lives together harmoniously, embracing the distinctiveness of the different ethnics and cultural groups. And we went on to show what Mthwakazi is not. It is not an idea to resuscitate and elevate people of Nguni stock and pedigree to a position of dominance whereby everybody else will be turned into a servant. That is propaganda often peddled by those who are intimidated by the idea of Mthwakazi. And lastly, I also highlighted that Mthwakazi is not a political party, though we acknowledge that there are political parties who are doing a great deal of work in promoting Mthwakazi idea. And then I went on to say everybody who lives in that area, in the territory, and he feels like he's part of the community and is opposed to the injustices and the marginalization that the people of Matabeleland have faced in the past 41 days as part of Zimbabwe, then that person is a Mthwakazi, and there's no doubt about it. And those people who cherish this idea of Mthwakazi have a duty to stand together shoulder to shoulder and move forward in what then becomes this new political bloc that they are cherishing. Thank you very much for being part of today's talk and presentation. Please remember to subscribe to my channel and click a like and share these videos with your friends wherever they might be. Enjoy the rest of the day. Bye.